applause. Okay. I did not deserve that. All right. Guys, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Grateful to have an extra speedy service today. We're going to be like the denominational world and just have service done in about an hour. Amen? That's like unheard of, right, for the international Christian churches. But we're grateful to be able to worship God today with all of you guys today. All of your bright, shiny faces. I like that song where we're clapping, we're high-fiving, and okay, I'm digging this. I think the Hilo Church is like the most dynamic range of songs out of any church I've ever been to. Because usually it's like, all right, I've heard this song before, but here it's like, no, we're going through the whole book, guys. You guys seen the book? It's like the size of a Bible. Like, look at that thing. And our song leader, he's matching his shirt with the songbook itself. That's how sold out he is, guys. Now you know he's ready. All right. But really grateful for the Kelly clan to be here joining us today. All right. About to go camping with some of the campers. All right. You're going to come back and you're going to be the happy campers. Amen. So that's great. Excited for that. And hopefully you guys got some Boy Scout or, in this case, Girl Scout experience. Cool thing about camping is you're just hanging out. You're just learning from each other and learning about each other and learning what it means to just be closer friends. And so really excited for all of you guys to be able to participate in that. But with that, guys, today's sermon topic, I wanted to preach a little bit more about friendship. And so I don't know about you, but I want more friends. And I want better, stronger friends than ever. And so this is my third sermon about friendship. The first one I just threw out the window, and I preached the second one last week. And then this Sunday, I'm preaching the last friendship sermon. Nice. But my title today is Friends That Make Amends. Wow. Friends that make amends. Point number one, the closer we are to each other, the closer we are to God. The closer we are to each other, the closer we are to God. So we're going to start off in 1 Samuel chapter 20. And so last week, we had the opportunity of jumping in the book of Samuel. And for many of us, like it's a lot of our favorite book because we want to be kind of like David in some ways. And these sermons are more not just David, but also about Jonathan. And so today we're going to hone in a little bit more on the perspective of Jonathan. And we're going to skip chapter 19 and we're going straight to chapter 20. So we're leaving 19 behind. Here we go. Verse 20, it says, chapter 20, verse 1. Then David fled from Naioth at Ramah and went to Jonathan and asked, "What have I done? What is my crime? How have I wronged your father that he is trying to kill me?" "Never," Jonathan replied. "You are not going to die. Look, my father doesn't do anything, great or small, without letting me know. Why would he hide this from me? It isn't so." But David took an oath and said, "Your father knows very well that I have found favor in your eyes." And he said to himself, "Jonathan must not know this, or he will be grieved. Yet, as surely as the Lord lives, and as surely as you live, there is only a step between me and death." So we see it's kind of a special moment that they have together, but a kind of a scary special moment. And that's what we have as friends often. Wow. Now, Jonathan, the Bible says that to the pure, all things are pure. Yeah. So Jonathan had a pure heart because he's just focused on his relationship with God and his relationship with David. And now David has to come and say, "Hey, I got some bad news for you. Your dad's trying to kill me. He's trying to murder me, man." And so Jonathan's starting to put this together like, all right, maybe my dad's not such a spiritual guy as I had thought. And so David asked Jonathan to do one simple thing. To go back to the covenant that we once made together in chapter 18, that covenant of friendship. And so it requires great humility to call on one's friends. Wow. To be able to say, "Hey, remember that $5 you owed me? I could use that right about now." Right? If you really needed $5, you're in a pinch right there, right? But he's like, "Hey, I need some help. I need some support." And in the same way, it was great to be able to have some of the disciples just that had time to be able to help out the Bartholomew's clean and move the other day. And they say there are two of the most stressful moments in a human's life. One is death, but the other one is moving. So David's going through one of these, and then the Bartholomews are going through the other one. But the fact that they're going through the inspection right this moment. They could have been in 2 or 3 different places that they had to been this week, but instead they're here worshiping God with us. And it just shows your heart and your humility and wanting to accept help so that you can worship God with everybody else. So, but relationships aren't just take. Relationships are also to give and to give each other. And you guys are great examples of giving. And so, when it comes to family, we're quick to be able to help one another because they're close to their relationship with God. And how much are we going to help the world, but how much more are we going to help each other? Verse 4. Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you." So he's dropping some bars right here. In a sense of rhyming, but also in the sense of he's like, I'll do whatever you need. And that's a friend willing to do whatever it takes to help out each other. And so, he really has the heart of what we see as a disciple these days. Willing to go anywhere, do anything, and give up everything for the gospel. And so John was friends with David through the good, but also through the bad. It was so easy for him to support this hero who had saved Israel from the Goliath. But how hard was it for John to be friends with David, who was now being labeled falsely? And John had to put his own livelihood on the line. But regardless of the cost of friendship, he said, I'm here with you. And so he could have stepped back and said, hey, you know what? Your feud with my dad, that's between you guys. I'm gonna let you guys figure that out. I don't want to get in the mix of it. But rather, he's like, no, I'm with you to the end. Wow. And so why would Jonathan, be willing to be able to put his relationship with his own father on the line at the expense of his friend? It's because of his values. His value in his love and David's love for God, but also Jonathan's love for the truth itself. And he didn't care. He was willing to put his own family on the line for what the truth meant to him. And so though the truth was on the side of so even though what was false was on the side of his family, he chose what was true on the side of his friendship. Wow. And that goes against all cultures. Yeah. That goes against the cultures in the Jewish religion. It goes against our culture here. It shows how much love he had for the truth. Yeah. And so we've heard it before, that God's love is unconditional. Yeah. But so John 3:16, it says that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So his love is unconditional in offering it to us. Yeah. But let's go to turn to John 15, and we'll see if there's a condition of his friendship. So it's programmed into our ears in songs, in worship music, and even in church culture that everything is kind of unconditional with God. But we see that if we use the term if, there's a conditional aspect to our relationship with God. John 15, verse 9, the Bible says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love." There's an if there. If we keep his commands, then we will remain in his love. Just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. So you realize the Son wouldn't have remained in the Father's love if he wouldn't have kept his commands right there. Interesting. Even the father-son relationship was conditional. Verse 11, "I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this, love each other." Love each other, as the islanders say right there. Each other. as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. Verse 15. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. And so we see here that God's friendship is as well conditional for not only each other, between David and John because of their respect for God, but also for our friendships with God himself. And so we see a vertical love between ourselves and him, but we also see the horizontal love because Jesus says, if you do what I command you, you'll be in my love. And if you look deeper, we're going to see that what did he command us? He commanded us to love one another. Yeah. And so our connection, I mess this up all the time, mutually exclusive. So basically, like, in order for us to be connected with God, we have to be connected with others. Yeah. And so we can't have that connection with God if we aren't connected with each other. Because, like, how are we supposed to love God if we can't love our own brother or sister? Yeah, true. And so what is the cost? Jesus says, like, hey, there's a cost to following, being a disciple. And that's giving up everything. In this scripture, he says, you got to lay down your life. Your life. Man, I laid down like 10 minutes after church to have coffee time with some of the guys, you know. And that was pretty cool. But there was no like agreement where I like was to die for that person and they were going to die for me. And so, but we see here the counter argument is that we need to die to each other in order for us to be willing to die for Christ. Yeah. So the more we love our brother and our sister, the more we love Jesus. Yeah. And I believe it's inverse is true. The more we love Jesus, the more we can love each other. Yeah. Amen. And in 15b, he says, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. And so if Jesus says, like, hey, you're friends because I made everything known to you, you're no longer a servant, but you're my friend, then that also means that if we haven't gone through the Gospels, which teaches all about what Jesus did for us, then can we really be called his friends? And so if you guys are visiting for the first time, I encourage you, get in the Bible and start reading through the Gospels, because these are love letters written directly to you. And if you haven't gone into the Bible in quite some time, I want to encourage you to reread one of the Gospels, if not all of them. Because sometimes we can get so stuck in the Old Testament that we forget a little bit about what Jesus is doing. Yeah. And it's kind of cool to kind of go back once in a while and remind us and get a little fresh air right there. Yeah. But I remember myself, when we were doing our best to be able to connect with each other and connect with God when we were on the mission team in Guam. And so I'm going to share a little story that I shared with some of the Bible Talk leaders with all of you guys. So there's this memory I had where every day for a week, we decided that we would either do a sunset prayer or a sunrise prayer together. And so we had to wake up fairly early. I'll tell you about the sunrise prayer later, but I'm going to talk about the sunset prayer right now. So the sunset prayer was pretty cool. So we went to this, I think it was like an overlook called Subic Bay. I don't know if you remember that, bro. It's like, okay, it's by Mount Lam. So there's like a little lookout area over there. So he used to be in Guam. And so there's this area where there's like a stone wall about this high, and then the poles come up above it, and then there's another pole over here so that you don't fall off the cliff when you're praying. Because everybody goes to their prayer, amen. And so I have my phone set up, just kind of like right there, right? Making so that I can like do a time lapse for the sunset. And so I set it up, and we're having a prayer. And my brother Sean, he's a comedian. He always messes with me. He's like, hey, bro, I think your phone's gone. It's like, bro, shut up, man. Got a little nervous right there, like, is he lying? So I look over, and sure enough, my phone's gone. And I'm like, dang it, what the heck? And we look over the cliff, and I see my phone just lit up. Like 20 or 30 feet below, there's like a shelf below the cliff. And I'm like, dang it, how the heck am I supposed to get my phone now? And, it was an iPhone 10, so it wasn't a bad phone. And I just knew that like it rains like every day in Guam. And so it's kind of like here. So I was like, if it rains, it's probably going to get washed down. So it's like, we got to get the phone tonight. And so I turned to the military guy with us that we were studying the Bible with. And I was like, hey, bro, like all military guys know how to rappel, right? And he's like, I got to go. And he dipped. He was not there long. He went home. I was like, this guy. Someone else is gonna have to take over his studies, all right? No, but after that, we were like, you know what? We got to make it happen. So the only place that was closest that was open at the time was Home Depot. Nice. So yeah, so we made a nice mission. We drove about 45 minutes to Home Depot, and we got the biggest collapsible ladder we could find. We got a headlamp and some rope. And so I made sure the rope was strong enough. You can guess what the rope's for. So, there were no climbing stores open. It was late. And so I'm on my way. We're on our way back to our house to pick up the GoPro. Got to record it. This is cool. So these are just the boys. We're excited. We're like, we're on a mission right now, guys. This is cool. And so we get the GoPro. And we're going back down south. And on the way there, I'm on this YouTube video learning how to make a harness out of rope. And then I learned, okay, you got to learn how to do a slip knot so that you can make the harness. And so I'm on YouTube, just like in the back seat, like, all right, guys, like trying to figure out how to do a slip knot. Wow. And pretty sure I figured it out, And we get out of the car, we get there, and there's like cars driving by, and we're like, we can't get seen by the cars, right? And I just felt like kids again, just playing in the dark, like, you gotta watch out for the bad guys. And we're adults, so we tie the top of the ladder to the bar right here. We throw the ladder over, but it didn't quite reach the bottom. And so I'm like, dang it, okay. So I get the harness, I put the harness on, and I tie the harness to the rope. And I got like 5 brothers just like holding the rope. And I had Freddie in the back, and he was like our anchor, he was just holding it like that. And I was like, all right, guys, don't drop me. He's like, we're not going to drop you, bro. He's like, all right, guys. I get on the thing. I'm like, all right, guys. All right, let me go. And I start going down the ladder, but then no one's letting any rope down. And I'm like, all right, guys, you got to let go of it a little bit. And they're like, no, bro, you're not going to fall. So I was like, I need some rope to get down. So I finally get down, going down the ladder, and I get to the bottom, and I get to the shelf. And there's just like a bunch of trash down there, but then sure enough, my phone's right there. And when I had first saw the phone, when I looked down, I saw it was lit up. I saw like a face on it. I was like, that's creepy. There's no face on the background on my phone. And so we thought that there were these like ancient spirits called tatamona, where like they like mess with people in the woods. It's kind of a crazy thing. And so we go down there, and I was thinking there was like a tatamona on my phone or something. I don't know. I didn't believe these spirits, but like everyone believes them there. And I was like, all right, these things are legit. And so I grab my phone, start climbing the ladder, and then an Apache helicopter like goes right over us. And we're like, oh no, they're going to see us. Their thermal lenses or whatever. And whatever, I get to the top, and it was a mission success. I made it out alive. And so... And so we share that moment together, It was cool. It was a special moment, and it was surrounded us like trying to connect with each other and connecting with God. And so I think the closer we are together, the closer we want to get to God. And I think our quiet times just took off from that moment. And it was just a special moment for all of us to make amends. And I'll tell you why we had to make amends later, amen. But ultimately, Jonathan, he loved David so much. Not because David was cool, not because he was popular, but because David was walking in the light. Wow. And David, as we go to 1 Samuel chapter 27, we can kind of idolize David sometimes. We could think, man, this guy was like perfect. Like he had his act together. But if we read 1 Samuel chapter 27, verse 1, we see he's human too. Yeah. Verse 1 says, but David thought to himself, one of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul. The best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. So David, who was this warrior who was known for killing tens of thousands of Philistines, all of his enemies, he decided it would be a good idea to leave his homeland and go live among his enemies right there. And we understand that, like, because of the pressure he was enduring, because his stepfather was out to kill him, that he wanted to leave. And so that could be us sometimes, going to places where we know we shouldn't be, and because we're trying to escape what God's trying to do in our lives. And so Noemi is a great example. She went to Moab with her sons. Abraham and his whole family went to Egypt, and we know what happened there. And then, of course, the fact is that when pressure is among us, we can feel squeezed. And our hearts will never fail to suggest us to sinful solutions when pressure comes to us. And so if we feel like we're pressured to go to sin in our trials, we're not alone. We're in good company with David right here. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "A woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her in some hot water." And I love that. I was in my friend's kitchen, and I was like, that's cool. But we all, man, woman, child, like, we all have a boiling point to a certain extent. Yeah. And so for me, I met that boiling point when we woke up early. So I wanted to get there for, like, from it to be dark all the way for the sunrise to come up. And there was a brother who was late for us getting ready, and we all lived together. So I'm like getting mad, like just waiting for him. And I'm like, I'm trying to get spiritual right here. You over here ruining it for us, right? And I was just mad. And so obviously I was more spiritual, right? And so I get in the car, and then it just smells like fake cherry because of, like, that car scent. I don't know if you guys, some of us just hate that smell. For me, I was like, no, that is not black ice right there. That is some other stuff. So I was so mad, and I found out the guy who was late was the guy who bought it and put it in the car. And I was like, bro, what the heck? I chucked it, I threw it on the ground, and I was mad. And all the brothers were just silent. Like, I'm not gonna say anything. He's like, bro, I was just trying to make the car awesome. It's like, it's not awesome. We did not talk about this. And we get in the car and we leave. And needless to say, when we came back, some kid actually ended up finding it and picking it up and taking it. Because I felt bad. I was going to pick it up and give it to him and just apologize. But it was gone. But it shows that God allowed us to have that mission later because we hadn't made amends in that moment. Wow. Because of our friendship was hurt, because of my pride, because of my anger, because of my impatience. And so we can all have that boiling point. Point number 2, be prepared for what's unfair. Be prepared for what's unfair. So if we're prepared in our devotion to God, we can be prepared for whatever situation God puts in our lives. And so the Bible says, I have hid the word in my heart so that I might not sin against you. Yeah. And so we need to be able to have that devotion in times of peace, but also having, of course, the devotion in times of difficulties. Mm-hmm. And so Joshua is a great example of one who had prepared in times of peace by accruing lots of food before the famine even came. And so we have to have that same mentality, that we have to be so devoted to God when things are going good, because there's going to become a time where God's going to put situations in our life where we really have to depend on our closeness to God. And so I heard that it's hurricane season coming up. And Daryl, I was talking to Daryl about that. And Daryl's a prepared guy. You should see his business card. It's all about being prepared. The prudent, right? And I was like, bro, I'm excited for hurricane season. He's like, no, you shouldn't be. I was like, he's like, because like 90% of everything that we get is imported from other parts, the mainland mostly. And so like, bro, like if the hurricane comes, like none of our stuff's gonna come here, and you're gonna feel it. And I was like, all right, bro, you're right. So, but it reminded us, like, man, like how much more do we have to be more prepared in spiritual storms for our lives? And so Jonathan and David had prepared their relationship. Sometimes when we're going through storms, it's nice to have a friend in the mix. Yeah. And so in chapter 18, we saw his first covenant that we had with him. In chapter 20, verse 16, we see a second covenant as we read.
So, bro,
Chapter 20, verse 16. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord call David's enemies to account." And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. So this is the second covenant. Man, it's one thing to kind of like make a covenant, a contract with a best friend. It's kind of like, you really got to do that? But like they did that. And then they didn't just do it 2 times. They actually made a third covenant in 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 17. So it's a lot. It's like you're kind of doing a lot right now by doing 1 covenant. But the fact that he did 3 was like, man, there's something here. Like there's something here. Like he didn't just do it once, one and done. But when I see this relationship and this third covenant, like I see that this guy is persistent. He has a persistent friendship. That he has a heart of forgiveness. Wow. That he had to affirm his friend, hey, I'm still with you till the end. Wow. And it reminds me of how much I need to grow and how much room I have to grow in what it means to being a friend. Yeah. What it means to being a lover and a friend to my wife. Yeah. What it means to being a friend to the disciples here. What it means to still have friendships, even though I have friendship in the mainland, I still have to hold on to some of my friendships there. Yeah. And as well as my friendships with the lost. And so we can have next level friendships by making a committed act of friendship. We're only one committed act away for our next level of love in our friendships. Yeah. Verse 18. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon feast. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began, and wait by the stone, Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it as though I were shooting at a target. Then I would send a boy and say, 'Go find the arrows.' If I say to him, 'Look, the arrows are on the side of you. Bring them here. Then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you are safe. There is no danger. But if you say to the boy, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember the Lord is witness between you and me forever." So David hid in the field, and when the new moon feast came, the king sat down to eat. So we got, so in the scriptures it says that the Lord has sent you away. So it wasn't by chance. It wasn't by anything through Satan's schemes, but it was solely from God that God had sent David away from the kingdom right here. And in the same way, we have to realize that even through the injustice of man, God is working on our behalf. And so Christians, if we as Christians really believe this, I truly believe this, even through the toughest storms that God is doing this for a reason, I think we'd have better sleeps at night. I think we would have less arguing and making more amends to agree on what we agree on. And it would change our hearts completely. Come on, bro. And so if we understand that we too can have a Saul in our life. But imagine if God was sovereign, which he is, then we can bring on the Sauls. We can have 5 Sauls. We can have 10 Sauls because God is in control of the Sauls. And David was called to do something that we're all very, very good at. Waiting. Aren't you guys good at waiting? You're not? I don't know. All right. So it's hard. Imagine waiting a couple hours in your friend in a random field. Just a couple hours. Right? You probably get hungry. Where the heck is this guy? He better be bringing me some food. But he didn't wait just a couple hours. He waited 3 days. So he's got a rock for a pillow, probably playing with some ants with Alex. Right? And so he's roughing it out there. He's camping like the campers that we got coming over here a couple days. And so if God made the greatest king to have lived wait time after time, how much more is he going to make us wait on him? Wait in that HPP traffic.
Come on, preach, bro.
Wait for payday.
Preach, bro.
Is there a mic where only the husbands can hear me? Wait for... Okay. I hear you, bro. Amen. Verse 24. Verse 24.
Say it, bro. Come on.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Come on, bro.
It's worth it. There's a whole song on that. It's a Brad Paisley song. Anyways. Verse 24. So David hid in the fields, and when the new moon feast came, the king sat down to eat. He sat in his customary place by the wall, opposite Jonathan, and Abner sat next to Saul. But David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he is unclean. But the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, "Why hasn't the son of Jesse came to the meal, either yesterday or today?" Jonathan answered, "David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Let me go because our family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. If I have found favor in your eyes, let me get away to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table.'" Verse 30. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan and said to him, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die." So anyway, Saul couldn't even say his name. He said, "Son of Jesse." He had that much hatred in his heart for this guy. And through his hatred, he had this hidden sin because Jonathan didn't know about it. And so the fact is, with hidden sin, eventually it's going to have public consequences. This had affected Saul's wife and now affected his son John. And to the point of calling his own mom a harlot. Basically, he was saying, "You're not even my son anymore. You're somebody else's son." Imagine the emotional damage it was going through his mind, through his heart. And so we see a principle here. We got to ask ourselves, are we prepared to be disowned by our faith? Are we prepared to be disowned by our faith? Wow. Jonathan was. Jonathan was prepared. And so what was he prepared for? He was willing to stand up for the truth at any expense. Yeah. And so we understand Jesus does the same thing in Mark 3, verse 32. You know, the guys come in and say, "Hey, Jesus, your family's outside." And he's like, "Who are my family?" And those sitting around him were the ones that were doing his will. My mother, sister, brother, and mother. And so though family is super important, we can't put it above our relationship with God. Because if we do that, then we start tinkering with what idolatry can happen in our relationships. And so idols themselves, they can be incredible things that are good. But if we put them before God, not so good. And why can it be an idol for us? Because we make it about us. It's our family instead of God's family. But what does bring God glory is having that honorable connection with each other as a physical or spiritual family, if we're willing to be able to make time for our family, make time to add to the family, to help keep people strong. And so Saul, who was really ticked off right here, he said, "You know what? I'm going to put family first. I'm looking after you, Jonathan, in your kingdom." But really, he wasn't looking after Jonathan's kingdom. He was looking after his own kingdom. Yeah. Instead of being concerned about his kingdom. Yeah. And so the fact is, emotions mixed with sin have a way of twisting the truth.
Yeah.
And so just the other day, yesterday actually, a couple days ago, my wife lost her notebook for taking notes for her Bible, her quiet time. And we're just like, "What the heck is this?" She kept asking me, "Where is it?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't use it," right? And we were in the car with Eli, and she's like, I just can't find it. And then we asked Eli, she's like, "Oh yeah, it's in the Walmart bag." I'm like, "That's weird. How did she know that?" And she's like, "I hope you're telling the truth, because mommy's gonna be very sad, if we lost my notebook." And Eli's like, "A bad guy must have taken it." It was the bad guys. I was like, "Eli, sometimes we could be the bad guy, you know?" She's like, "No, it had to have been the bad guy." And so now if anything's to blame, I just blame on the bad guys, right? And amen. So, but there's also a principle that we must understand. If we're to be prepared, we must be prepared to be labeled as evil for standing for the truth. We must be prepared to be labeled as evil for standing for the truth. That means being willing to risk and give up our reputation of how people might see us. Being willing to be like, you know what, that's the Jesus guy. Sis, you got the hookup on that bottle right. Okay, sorry. The Jesus guy, like you're known for that, like the Bible thumper. Sorry, I was showing somebody the video of like, oh, sorry. I should not have said that. Reputation, you might be known as something, and we might be afraid to give that up in order to be known for not being ashamed of the gospel. And so in our past, we were ashamed of Jesus, but in our present, we are shameless because he saved us.
Yes. Come on, bro.
So we got to be prepared to stand for the truth because the world has sat down for a lie. So we got to be prepared to be disowned because we have been owned by our Father in heaven. Amen?
Yeah.
And so I'm guilty myself of having shame for the gospel at times in my own life. Being at our gym at UFC Gym, sometimes I could be a little afraid of like burning a bridge before I build the bridge with somebody. But then, sometimes I'm like, that's stupid, I'm just going to share. And then I share, and then, they're just not really open or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't spend a week trying to get this guy to be my friend when he like hates Jesus to begin with, right? It's not always the case. It is good to build friendships beforehand.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it helps me remember that I'd rather be hated for telling people the truth than for them to lack the love of Jesus in their own life.
Yeah.
Because they're going to wish on judgment like if that person, that you guys had reached out to them at the bank line, that you had reached out to them in Walmart. And so that's where we are on Friday. It was great. Friday was a madhouse, probably because it was payday. And I saw a couple disciples, saw Kamea, and ran into our friend Brady, who was working there, which was encouraging. But we also got to run into our sister Cecile at the bank right there. And so the bank had the longest line ever. And so we had time to just kind of share with people around us and dance. Well, I was dancing. I was dancing in line a little bit. And so, it was cool because it's cool to see a disciple in her element, Cecile was like joyful, she's fired up, like interacting with the visitors, and we're like, okay, Cecile, you go, sis. She getting it. And she was like in a new branch before she was in a different one because she transitioned because she moved over here. And it was cool because she gives us a little hug, and then the person that we were reaching out to was like, oh, Cece? I was like, oh, she got a nickname. Okay, come on, Cece. Love that. But for me, it's like I have to, in order for me to do my best and be closest to God, is I have to pray before I go out and share my faith. I got to pray and make it an intention in my quiet time. When am I going to do this activity? So my encouragement is to, like Ronald says, be prepared so you don't have to.
Get prepared.
There we go. Be prepared so you don't have to get prepared. So we got to prepare our hearts for our days. And so point number 3, our last point, lasting friendships that reach beyond ourselves. Lasting friendships that reach beyond ourselves. So this is the communion portion of the sermon. And verse 32, chapter 20, verse 32. The story continues. Why shouldn't he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. On that day of the feast, he did not eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. So now his own son is filled with anger. And we can relate to anger. The world can relate to anger. The world can relate to being victims. And so we in our own lives, when things happen to us, we can play the victim role. And so, the world is got plenty of victims. Like if you call somebody the wrong pronoun, they're going to be offended. If you don't say thank you for doing something for somebody, they can flip out and say, man, you're not even grateful. I know that's kind of happened in my own heart at times. But nobody was more of a victim than Jesus.
Come on, bro.
Yet at the cross, he didn't have a single word of defensiveness.
Wow.
The only words he actually muttered were to agree with what was true.
Yeah.
And so why did he have this? He wanted to sacrifice his own life so that way we can have long-lasting friendships here in the kingdom. And so that we won't be victims, but we can be victors. And so John, he was angry, right? He just had his mother ridiculed. He just had himself ridiculed. He just realized that his dad is a narcissist. And now he's just been nearly murdered by his own father. No kidding, he's ticked.
Right.
But he's not mad for himself. He says because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David.
Wow.
So he had every reason to be personally offended,
Wow.
yet he was offended for his best friend.
Wow.
Man, Jonathan is that superhero,
Yeah.
right? Like, I would be personally offended myself, and I would have to fight that. But for Jonathan, it was all about somebody else. So his example of how we can be so unconcerned about ourselves, but so concerned about others and their injustice and the shame that they're going through, baffles me. And so if this is how we can act towards one another, how much more can we act in light of Christ's mercy towards him? And so this is not just a story about our relationships between each other, but also our relationships of what Jesus had done for us on the cross. And just imagining when we take communion, literally the blood dripping down his entire body.
Wow.
Every fingertip, every toe covered in blood.
Wow.
Because he's not only covered in blood, he's also covered in spit. Who he's been spat on. Who has been ripped of his clothes because of the shame they wanted to produce in this man.
Wow.
And when we remember these things, we can look at light of our own lives. Because we got to remember that we are the ones who were guilty of putting this man on the cross. We're not only guilty of putting this man on the cross, sometimes we're guilty of putting each other on the cross. Shaming each other. Making each other feel bad. Because we ourselves were offended and we ourselves were hurt. But Jesus taught us a key principle to live as friendships and be unoffended. If the next time we want to strike back towards somebody and hurt them back, we got to remember, is it worth putting this person literally on a cross and hanging them before everybody else? Because if the answer is no, then we get to reply and respond in our lives just like Jesus had, who was willing to take on the pain of the world and know that God is going to redeem him and God is going to resurrect him. And God is going to resurrect our friendships. And so Jesus says, whatever you've done to the least of them, you've done to me. So as we take communion today, let's think of the hurts that maybe someone else has given towards us. Maybe some of the hurts that we've given to others. And let's remember that we want to love them and not put them on the cross. We don't want to crucify them, but we want to give them our hearts the same way that Jesus gave us our hearts. So with that, guys, to God be the glory. Let's pray for communion.